Dame Patricia Routledge was beloved by millions, yet she lived her life almost entirely out of reach. She never married, never had children, and kept her private world tightly closed. This was no accident, and the reason behind it surprised even those closest to her. Beneath the laughter were choices that fueled years of speculation, rumors that followed her until the very end. Now, we finally understand how she spent her final years, whether she truly retired, and why she stepped away from an unforgettable sitcom at the height of its fame. This is the story of Dame Patricia Routledge's rise. For viewers around the world, Dame Patricia Routledge was instantly recognizable. Her voice, her impeccable timing, and her iconic role in keeping up appearances made her a household name far beyond Britain. She became synonymous with comedy, social satire, and a distinct kind of absurdity. But behind the laughter, her life was very different from what audiences saw on screen. Years after her most famous role faded from television, long-standing rumors about her private life and career choices began to emerge, and after her passing, these stories are finally being clarified. Patricia Routledge was born in 1929 in Tranmere, Birkenhead, Cheshire, into a modest working-class family. The world around her had little connection to the arts. Acting was not considered a practical career, especially for a young woman without money or connections. Her community valued stability and traditional work, not theater or performance. Yet from an early age, she showed a passion for language and storytelling, even if the path forward was uncertain. She attended Birkenhead High School, where her academic talent stood out, and later studied English at the University of Liverpool. It was through student drama productions that she first performed seriously. Though far from glamorous, these experiences were formative. She learned discipline, timing, and how to command attention without spectacle, skills that would define her career for decades. Breaking into professional theater was not easy. Routledge had no family connections and no financial safety net, relying instead on scholarships and sheer determination. Acceptance into the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School marked a turning point. The training was rigorous and competitive, forcing her to quickly adapt to professional standards. Many of her peers came from more privileged backgrounds, yet she matched them with focus and preparation. Work after training was hard to come by. Like many actors of her generation, she spent years in repertory theater and touring companies, taking whatever roles were available. These long, exhausting seasons brought little recognition, but they gave her range. She honed comedy, drama, musical timing, and stage presence night after night, before unpredictable audiences. The industry she entered was also male-dominated, especially in the 1950s and 60s. Women were often typecast or sidelined, particularly if they didn't fit a narrow idea of glamour. Routledge had to work harder to be taken seriously, particularly in dramatic roles. She refused to be boxed in, and her persistence eventually paid off. Her work with the Royal Shakespeare Company earned her respect. She proved she could move effortlessly between comedy and drama, classical texts and modern performance. This versatility became her hallmark. At the same time, she began appearing on television in the 1960s, even though TV was considered a lesser medium compared to the stage. Balancing both worlds was challenging, but she did it deliberately, refusing to sacrifice theater prestige or overlook television's reach. Her international breakthrough came through musical theater. In 1968, she won a Tony Award in New York for Darling of the Day. The victory established her beyond Britain and confirmed her global appeal. Even then, she continued resisting typecasting, moving between Shakespeare, musicals, and comedy rather than settling into a single niche. It wasn't until the 1990s that she became a true household name. Keeping Up appearances introduced audiences to Hyacinth Bucket, a character so unique and unforgettable that she threatened to overshadow everything else Patricia had done. The role brought fame, but also risk. Many viewers saw only the comedy and overlooked the depth of her stage career. Still, within the industry, her reputation was firmly established. She was respected as one of Britain's most versatile actresses, someone who rose from modest beginnings to the highest honors, including a damehood in recognition of her contributions to drama and charity. Yet behind that success were personal sacrifices, private losses, and rumors she rarely addressed publicly, stories that only surfaced later. Despite her public polish, Dame Patricia Routledge's private life was shaped by loss from an early age, long before she became a familiar face on television. She learned to persevere without the people who mattered most to her. Her father, Isaac Edgar Routledge, was a tailor and haberdasher in Birkenhead. He worked hard, earned modestly, and led a practical life, yet he supported Patricia's ambitions even when acting seemed uncertain. He died in 1985, when Patricia was in her mid-50s. By then, she was already well established in theater and television, but his death was a profound loss. He had been her last living link to her early life, quietly backing her long before awards or recognition. From that moment, she faced the world entirely on her own. This independence had been forced on her much earlier. Her mother, Catherine Routledge, died in 1957 when Patricia was still building her career. At that time, she was moving from one repertory theater to another, taking small roles and striving to establish herself in an industry that offered no guarantees. Her mother had been a homemaker and, importantly, the person who nurtured Patricia's love of reading, language, and performance. Losing her at such a critical stage was devastating. There was no emotional safety net, no familiar place to return to when work was scarce or rejection came. Patricia had to keep performing, keep touring, and keep proving herself while processing grief largely on her own. That loss shaped her approach to life. Friends and colleagues noted that she rarely spoke of personal pain. She focused on work, arrived prepared, and kept her private life private. Then there was her older brother, Kenneth Graham Routledge. Initially trained as a solicitor, he later became an ordained priest. Kenneth played a different role than her parents, offering advice, perspective, and grounding. He embodied responsibility, discipline, and moral purpose, qualities Patricia deeply admired. Sadly, Kenneth died in 1989, just before keeping up appearances turned her into a household name, making his loss all the more painful. Just as her career was on the verge of reaching unprecedented fame, the person Patricia trusted most for guidance was no longer there. Without him, she stepped into the most public phase of her life alone. The familiar voice that had kept her grounded beyond her work was gone, and success arrived rapidly, bringing with it mounting expectations, media attention, and the risk of being defined by a single role. Losing her brother meant she had to navigate all of this without the sibling who had always helped her maintain perspective. Patricia was often described as private, disciplined, and reserved, but this wasn't an affectation. It was the result of early lessons in grief. The world doesn't pause for loss. Work still had to be done. Roles had to be performed. Curtains had to rise. Even at the height of her fame, she maintained a strict separation between her public persona and her private life. She would appear on screen, then vanish into a life few people knew anything about. Having already lost so much, she was unwilling to let the rest of the world inside. While she rarely spoke openly about grief, its influence was evident in the care with which she selected her projects, her unwavering professionalism, and her indifference to celebrity culture and the emotional dramas surrounding it. Despite a long list of credits and awards, Dame Patricia Routledge's career was never as secure as it appeared. There were stretches between major roles when work slowed, auditions failed to produce offers, and she quietly questioned what came next. In later interviews, she admitted there were moments when roles were scarce and the future felt uncertain. That anxiety never fully faded, even as her reputation grew. Unlike many actors who relied on publicity to remain visible, Patricia went in the opposite direction. She valued privacy and tightly controlled her personal life, rarely attending industry parties, courting headlines, or oversharing. In a field built on exposure, this sometimes worked against her. Producers and executives didn't always know where she stood, and some misinterpreted her reserve as distance or disinterest. Her role as Hyacinth in Keeping Up Appearances finally brought her worldwide recognition, but with it came immense pressure. Audiences adored Hyacinth's exaggerated social climbing, lack of self-awareness, and comedic quirks. Laughter followed her everywhere, and fan adoration was overwhelming. Yet behind the scenes, Patricia felt the strain of being permanently tied to one character. Wherever she went, people expected Hyacinth, the voice, the gestures, the catchphrases. That expectation grew exhausting. Patricia had spent decades proving she could handle Shakespeare, opera, and serious drama, and she worried that both the public and the industry would overlook the breadth of her work. While she enjoyed playing Hyacinth, she didn't want it to define her entire career. Over time, this concern began to surface on set. During the show's run, Patricia became known for challenging material she felt was untrue to the character. She objected to lines or scenes that pushed Hyacinth too far into caricature, speaking up when situations felt implausible. Writers Roy Clark and Harold Snow sometimes revised scripts following discussions with her. These interventions weren't about ego, they reflected her standards. Patricia believed comedy worked best when grounded in reality, and she didn't hesitate to push back if she felt that line was crossed. Occasionally, this created tension. Production schedules are tight, and rewrites aren't always welcomed. Yet the show's success remained undiminished, which made her decision in 1995 all the more surprising. At the height of Keeping Up Appearance's popularity, with strong ratings and international syndication, Patricia chose to leave. There was no scandal, no firing, no behind-the-scenes drama. It was a deliberate choice. Fans were shocked, assuming a dispute or falling out. Some speculated she was pushed out. But Patricia maintained that her exit was a personal decision, made to safeguard her long-term career rather than chase short-term fame. Turning away from such a successful role came with consequences. Walking away meant relinquishing steady visibility and guaranteed work. Some doors opened, others quietly closed. She continued performing on stage and retained respect in theater circles, but she never regained the same level of mainstream television fame, and she seemed at peace with that. Often overlooked was the emotional weight of managing constant expectations. Fans wanted Hyacinth. Producers wanted reliability. Critics watched closely. Patricia, meanwhile, worked to protect her identity as a performer capable of far more than a single role. Colleagues described her as disciplined and exacting, expecting professionalism from herself and others. This earned respect but reinforced her reputation as someone unyielding. In a business built on compromise, such rigidity could be isolating. Beyond her career, another aspect of her life raised questions she rarely addressed: her decision not to marry. Patricia never married, never had children, and seldom explained why. It was neither a secret nor a scandal. She openly acknowledged that she did not marry, never dodging the question, yet she simply did not make it a topic of conversation. In an era when actresses were often defined by their relationships, she chose not to share that part of herself with the public. There is no evidence that she pursued a traditional family life. She never spoke about wanting children, and any romantic relationships she may have had were kept entirely private. No public partners, no red carpet appearances, no interviews hinting at love affairs. She drew a firm line between her work and personal life, and she never wavered from it. For Patricia, the theater came first, not as a strategic choice, but as a reality. She gave herself entirely to her craft: rehearsals, tours, performances, late nights, and constant travel. Acting wasn't something she fit around a personal life, it was her life. She later admitted that this focus wasn't the result of a calculated decision. It wasn't about deliberately choosing career over marriage, it simply happened. As she said, "I didn't make a decision not to be married and not to be a mother. Life just turned out like that because my involvement in acting was so total." The work demanded her time, energy, and attention, and she gave it willingly. By the time she paused to reflect, she was already committed to a life that left little room for a conventional domestic existence. Independence was central to her identity. She valued self-reliance and being answerable only to herself. Marriage, particularly in the mid-20th century, often carried expectations that didn't appeal to her. Women were expected to step back professionally or define themselves through their partners. Patricia rejected that framework. The era she entered was already dominated by men, and women had to fight to be taken seriously. Adding the demands of marriage could have complicated that struggle further, and she chose to dedicate herself wholly to her craft. Being single gave her the freedom to control her time, her career, her finances, and her decisions, luxuries many women of her generation did not have. Occasionally, she hinted at how she felt about this independence. In rare moments, she suggested she had no regrets. She spoke of fulfillment found in her work, in her performances, and in the charitable causes she supported. Her sense of purpose did not rely on a partner or family, it came from excelling in her work and doing so on her own terms. What was remarkable was the calmness with which she embraced that choice. There was no defensiveness, no bitterness, no lengthy explanations. She never presented herself as having sacrificed anything. She simply lived a life that made sense to her. That decision also reinforced her reputation for privacy. By keeping her personal life private, she ensured the focus remained where she wanted it, on her work. Audiences knew her characters intimately, but the woman behind them remained largely unknown, and that was intentional. Over time, however, her privacy began to spark speculation. People wondered, if she never married and had no children, was she lonely in her later years? Did she regret keeping so much to herself? Were there parts of her life she chose not to share? These questions grew louder as rumors circulated about her final years. After Dame Patricia Routledge passed away on October 3, 2025, at the age of 96, many of these long-standing rumors resurfaced. Stories that had quietly followed her career suddenly returned to the spotlight, often portraying her final years inaccurately. One persistent rumor suggested she lived an isolated life because she never married or had children. Some assumed she must have been alone. This idea gained traction as she appeared less in public during her later years, but her distance from the spotlight did not equate to distance from people. Another common misconception was that she spent her later years lonely. Media articles and online commentaries sometimes implied that her single status meant solitude. For outsiders, it was an easy narrative, especially since she always kept her personal life private. Yet those who knew her painted a very different picture. Following her death, official statements from her estate confirmed the rumors were false. Her agent said, "We are deeply saddened to confirm the passing of Dame Patricia Routledge, who died peacefully in her sleep this morning, surrounded by love." This simple statement contradicted years of speculation. She was not abandoned or forgotten, she was loved, cared for, and deeply connected to the people and causes important to her. One reason these rumors persisted for so long was that Routledge never corrected them while alive. She never felt the need to explain herself. She believed her private life required no public justification and remained consistent in this belief until the end. What many overlooked was how active she remained away from cameras. Routledge was deeply involved in charitable work, especially with organizations like the Royal Voluntary Service. She supported causes related to community care, older people, and public service, keeping her socially engaged and connected to others well into her later years. She also maintained strong ties to the theater world. Even after stepping away from regular performance, she stayed close to colleagues, attended events whenever possible, and followed new productions attentively. Those who interacted with her during these years spoke of her sharp memory, dry wit, and genuine interest in conversation. False reports about her health occasionally surfaced, claiming she was gravely ill or had already died. Each time, these claims were proven wrong, either by official statements or her own public appearances, quietly disproving the rumors without comment. Routledge never publicly disclosed serious health issues, managing aging privately and with dignity, just as she had throughout her life. Following her death, the truth became clear: she had lived her final years on her own terms. She chose privacy, not isolation, discretion, not withdrawal. Yet one question remained for many fans: did she ever truly retire, or did she simply choose when to step back? For years, fans speculated about her life after leaving regular television work. As public appearances became rare, many assumed she had gradually withdrawn from public life, even faded away without explanation. In reality, her exit was simple and deliberate. After her sitcom success, she made no announcement about retiring. There was no farewell tour, no emotional press cycle, no final interview. She simply stopped taking on-screen roles. For someone who had always guarded her private life, this quiet departure was entirely consistent. After her death, her family confirmed she had retired by choice, not due to illness, resentment, or loss of interest. She had simply reached a point where the demands of television fame no longer appealed to her. She had done it all, the schedules, publicity, repetition, and felt no need to keep proving herself. Her retirement did not mean she abandoned acting. According to her agent, she remained deeply passionate about performance, particularly live theater. Even after leaving the screen, she continued attending plays, following new productions, and supporting the theater community. Her agent said, even at 96 years old, Dame Patricia's passion for her work and for connecting with live audiences never waned. Just as new generations continue to discover her through her beloved television roles, she will be dearly missed by those closest to her and by her devoted admirers worldwide. Patricia cared about audiences, she simply did not want to be in front of cameras anymore. This distinction is important. Many assumed she left because she was tired of acting, but that was not true. She stepped away from visibility, not creativity. Television had brought her global recognition, but theater was where she felt most at home. Sitting in an audience and watching performers navigate live moments still thrilled her. Friends and colleagues said she followed theater closely, speaking about performances with the same sharp attention she had always shown. Her love for timing, delivery, and storytelling never faded. She retained her passion for the craft, even if she no longer sought the spotlight. Public perception drifted from reality. Because she was unseen, people assumed she had vanished, but she had not. She simply shifted her focus, choosing a quieter life that allowed her to stay connected to the arts without getting caught up in the machinery of fame. That choice also protected how she wanted to be remembered. By stepping away on her own terms, she avoided being defined by nostalgia or overexposure. Her work could stand on its own, free from the pressure of trying to recreate past success. Yet, one question continued to linger in the minds of fans: if she deliberately left television, did she ever regret walking away from the role that made her famous? Did she regret leaving the show? Even after Keeping Up appearances ended, this question seemed to follow Dame Patricia Routledge wherever she went, though she rarely addressed it directly. Fans adored Hyacinth so much that many couldn't understand why anyone would willingly leave that level of success. Rumors quickly filled the gap. Some suggested she felt trapped by the character, while others claimed she might have wished she had stayed longer, especially as the role continued to find new audiences through reruns around the world. Over time, the idea that she might have regretted leaving became part of the show's afterlife, repeated often enough to seem believable. Patricia herself admitted that the period after the sitcom ended wasn't entirely smooth. Audiences strongly associated her with Hyacinth, which made moving forward challenging. People expected the voice, the mannerisms, and the comedy, and her serious stage work didn't always get the recognition it deserved at first. The transition brought uncertainty, and she never denied that, but uncertainty wasn't the same as regret. Whenever she spoke about the role, she was clear: she did not regret playing Hyacinth. She understood the impact the character had on her life. The show brought her international recognition, financial security, and a place in television history. She respected the role and never dismissed its importance in her career. More importantly, Patricia emphasized that ending the show was her choice. She didn't drift away, nor was she pushed out, she decided to stop. In her own words, "I brought it to an end," which of course the BBC didn't care for very much. "I thought the writer was beginning to recycle old ideas." She also admired the approach of Ronnie Barker, who always ended projects at their peak, leaving people wanting more rather than questioning whether it was still on. She wanted that same sense of timing in her career and had other adventures to explore. As an actress, she wanted to tell the stories of other people. Her reasoning was practical. Comedy works best when it stays sharp, and she didn't want Hyacinth to become a tired version of herself. She also wanted the freedom to explore theater, music, and different types of roles, She wasn't ready to spend the rest of her career doing just one thing. While fans continued to speculate, her position never wavered. She acknowledged the challenges that came after leaving the show, but she stood by her choice. Hyacinth defined a chapter of her life, not her entire identity. Stepping away was not a mistake but a deliberate decision she made with full awareness of its consequences. Do you think Dame Patricia made the right choice by leaving the show? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen.